Welcome. Okay, my name is Grace Onyebolise. I am a reading facilitator, and what that means is that I enjoy to read and I like to encourage people to read. There's so much richness in reading and so much you can gain from books, whether they are fiction or they are non-fiction, whatever it is. If it's thriller, even the book you're even ignoring to read, there's always a lesson from every book. So today I want to do a book review, a very beautiful and amazing book that I read recently, and I love the book. I love the book. Okay, we're talking about Changing Habits by Debbie Macomber. Okay, I'm trying to imagine if I'm pronouncing the words correctly, because these habits here happen to be the scarf that Reverend sisters wear, like, the head tie they wear. That symbolize the fact that they are nuns and that they're dedicated to Christ and that they are bride of Jesus. Okay, so I hope I'm able to pronounce it correctly, but what I'm saying here is Changing Habits by Debbie Macomber. Debbie Macomber happens to be a very intelligent writer that I love. Her romance are out of this world. Like, it's not like the normal M&B that you read and then there's pulling of clothes, the steering of one thing or the other, and then there's the sexual ecstasy that just happens to you and all that. Debbie Macomber's book is amazing, simply amazing, and this book is no exception. Trust me, it's no exception. Okay, so we have three major characters in this book that we have to look at. We have Angelina, we have Caitlin, and we have Joanna. Okay, so these three major characters are the three persons that are cardinal or important in this fiction. And then you find that these ones, one of the things you have to learn about them is that their environment inspired their decisions. Sometimes we think we are making a decision out of the blues, like, okay, God is actually speaking to me. We spiritualize our decision making, forgetting that the environment we grow in, the people we meet, condition and help us in our decision making. Sometimes you feel like you are actually taking Coca-Cola all by yourself, but then you've forgotten you watched the advert. So when these young ladies were surrounded by Reverend sisters, obviously they were Catholics and they were dedicated Catholics. They wanted to serve the Lord. So over time they made a decision that being a Catholic nun was actually the best decision they could ever take. Let's look at Angelina. Angelina is the daughter of an Italian man, and this man loved food. Restaurant was just the thing that he liked. And Angelina wakes up one day and said she wants to be a Reverend sister. Let's back up a little bit. Angelina's father is actually a widower, okay, and he's lost his wife. The wife, on her dying bed, has said, you know what, bring up my daughter as a Catholic. I want her to be a faithful Catholic. He is not into the church kind of thing, and so he decides, every day I'm going to go to mass just to please my wife. And all of a sudden, my daughter that I think that I'm building this big restaurant and this big business for, decides I want to become a Catholic nun. That was really heartbreaking for Angelina's father. So Angelina's father, let's use the word that we use in the religious palace, said backslided, stopped going to church, because why? He felt, God has taken my wife, God is not taking my daughter. So Angelina gets to the convent. I'm going to just ignore everything that happened, like their training and all that. A lot of rich lessons you learn from being a Catholic nun, especially the year of quietness and then doing unpleasant jobs. There were just so many things you could learn from that, but I'm going to leave that because that would take a lot of our time. So Angelina becomes a teacher and starts teaching and gets to meet this young lady, Corina. And Corina was actually a very intriguing character because she's such an inquisitive young lady. She wanted to know everything. Then in the Catholic setting, it was already said that you cannot use contraceptive, you cannot plan the number of children you're supposed to have, just allow the Lord lead you. As at then, okay, things had actually changed in this moment. So she actually fell in love with this guy, Jimmy. Of course, she's a student, and she kept on inquiring from Angelina, because when you have someone as a mentor and their word is something you hold on to, sometimes you want to learn from them and you want them to affirm some of the decisions you're taking. So he kept on pressuring Angelina to question the Catholic belief and ask that it's not right for people who had not been in love to say that, so for someone who is in love, you can't make love, and when you make love, you can't use contraceptive. Okay, granted, we're not married, but then our hormones are running wild. Can't I just use something to stop me from getting pregnant? And so along the line, well, Angelina, in a way, did not want to answer those questions. There were not things she was ready to grapple with. And then her student eventually gets pregnant, had an abortion, dies, and in the process of trying to die, Angelina discovered that she was actually questioning, so that if she had affirmed, it would have saved her life, saved her from dying. Of course, that made Angelina depressed for a very long time, very depressed for a very long time, and she decides, I want to leave the Catholic, being a Catholic norm. So gets back, was depressed for a very long time, and then the father comes one day looking for her to take her home, and that was her escape route out of the convent. She leaves the convent. Now let's get to Caithlina. Caithlina, a very interesting character. Caithlina is someone who came into the convent as a virgin, never knew anything about a man. The sister kept on gisting her about what love was, what sex was, but then she wasn't really interested. Her focus was just on serving the Lord. From the get-go, Caithlina actually believed she had a goal to serve the Lord. So she came into this convent, and like I said, I don't want to talk about their training section and the issues they had with Mother Superior. I think when you read the book, you get to get the gist and tie up the lessons there. But then she meets this Reverend Father over there, whom they became quite a bit of a friend, Father Brian. Father Brian was sent to protect Father Sender. Father Sender is a drunkard, by the way, and Father Sender was actually dipping his hands into the church pockets to fuel his addiction. Along the line, Caithlina had to be the one who would eventually take record of church recordings, and she finds herself in this mess where she has to keep covering up for the sender. Mother Superior kept questioning her, but because Father Brian had said, the bishop sent me here to protect the image of this Reverend Father, so we just have to do everything and make it on a low key. Well, along the line, why Father Sender's drinking habits becomes too much to handle, Father Brian decides to report to the bishop. The bishop felt, I sent you there to save his soul. You couldn't save his soul. Now you have to be fired. Fired Father Brian, and Father Brian has to go to another region. Caithlina suffers the heartbreak. A new Reverend Father comes in. The secret is discovered, and Caithlina is dismissed from the convent for being dishonest. But she didn't want to implicate Father Brian, so she took all the blame. Beautiful. So that was how she left the convent. So she kept on questioning, so what is the use of trying to save someone who is already feasting his way, who is already set in his way? Why should I feast him? But then we get to know that Father Brian and Sister Caithlina had already developed a kind of relationship which Father Brian was actually trying to curtail and deny that he wasn't feeling. We see Sister Joanne. Sister Joanne, on the other hand, happened to be someone who was heartbroken by a lover before she came into the convent. She had had a test of what sex was. She and her boyfriend were actually virgins when they had the first sex, so she had a test of what sex was, and she was actually looking forward to marriage with this young man. All of a sudden, he has to go to Vietnam because there was a kind of war at that time, so he had to go to Vietnam. He got to Vietnam and got himself a Chinese girlfriend, impregnated her. A lot of things happened, and so their relationship just sad, and she had to cry, recover from the heartbreak and all that. In the midst of recovering from heartbreak, she feels being called to become a reverend sister was the solution or escape route from sorrow. So that was what brought Joanne to the convent. So Joanne gets into the convent. They had beautiful moments in the convent, the prayer section, the prayer sections, the times where they had to eat a food made by Sister Angelina. remember I told you that Sandelina's father is actually a caterer, okay, had this Italian restaurant that he was hoping to hand over to his daughter, but eventually the daughter went to the convent. Okay, so Sister Joanne eventually gets in here, learns to be a nurse, and is very good at a nursing skill, gets to the hospital, and then becomes entangled with a medical doctor called Dr. Tim. Dr. Tim liked her and adopted her into his own team, and well, a couple of things happened. Sister Joanne, in trying to free herself from the feeling sexually attracted to this guy, eventually reported herself to Mother Superior. Mother Superior had to give Joanne some time to go, okay, and look at if she really wanted to be a Reverend sister after several reprimanding. And so she had to get home, stay with her parents for a while. But after a while, she decided she has to write the Vatican and then ask to be released from her spiritual duty, because she felt, how can I be in this place where I feel so much in love with this man, and then I still want to be a servant of God. I think if my hormones are interfering with me serving God, I think I should better just respect my hormones and stay in my parents' house. So she decides to get back home and all that. Well, like the story goes, and we all know how that would go, Joanne gets married to Tim, so she's now released from her spiritual responsibility. Katrina, on the other hand, teaches us another vital lesson, and that vital lesson is this. The vital lesson is this, that the church actually is like a cocoon or like a shell. It protects you from the outside world. Because when she got back home, or got back to where she decided to get back to later on, you discover that Catherine actually now was open to seeing males a lot, and these people were not people who were God-fearing. They had little or no conscience. They could hurt you without thinking. And she met this young man named Peter, and Peter was really into music. She was into music. She enjoyed it, and but along the line, well, one thing led to another. In the midst of saying no, Peter actually takes her virginity. And that was the heartbreaking point for Catherine. You see, for Kathleen, I keep calling her Catherine. It's Kathleen. Okay, so for Kathleen eventually loses her virginity. She calls Father Brian. Father Brian encourages her. Kathleen goes for another date, and this time around it's with someone who is actually married with kids. So she eventually started playing with the kids, loved the man and all that. But then it didn't happen, because why? Father Brian eventually at some point opens up to, do not marry this man, because why? I am in love with you. So that ends her dating struggles. She had to marry Father Brian, and her marriage to Father Brian happened to be a big blessing, because then Kathleen was someone who was destined to have multiple births. Her first child were twins, the second were triplets. So imagine she was still married to this other man who was married, who had kids. They would have had a very large family that they won't be able to cater for. And we see Kathleen encourage Father Brian that no matter how jobless he was, because Father Brian had to resign from his from his priesthood, because after he's seen the plenty politics, Father Sender actually died. Because why? The church did not even take any drastic decision. They're expecting a younger priest to be the one to take those decisions. So Father Sender actually killed himself. He was drunk and then entered into an auto crash and died. So we see Angelina. Angelina is someone who, okay, her love life didn't really come to an exciting end. I wish it did, but it also had a good part. The good part is that she developed the heart of a mother. She could literally care for a teenager, understand a teenager, based on what had happened to her in the past. So she dated someone who had children. The marriage didn't happen because why? She was not outgoing. The guys actually expected her to be more outgoing, but she was way too introverted. So it really didn't happen for her. But what did happen for her was that she was able to have ladies who loved her, little teenagers, children who loved her, came around her. She taught them, and 2 of them became too close to her. In the reunion, which happened at the end of the book, you'll see them pouring out the lessons they've learned from the convent and the things they've learned from the convent. Of course, there's a lot of church politicking going on, and there could be a lot of things in the church that may not match up our belief system, but then, or match up with what is rhyming with us. But the truth remains that the church and what the church had taught them actually prepared them for their marital life, each one of them. So you may think that this detour I'm taking in life is not really helping me. It's not really what I want for my life, but there's a lesson God is teaching you in it, and that's one beautiful thing the book taught us. There's a lesson God is teaching you. There is something God is calling your attention to. It's a very, very amazing book. Talks about, because it's so much centered around Catholics, I think some Catholic persons may really want to read it, not because everything there, but it just tells you the evolution of some of the things that had happened in the Catholic Church, including how they got to start wearing clothes that could show a bit of their legs, how they could start making their hair show a bit, how a lot of evolution that took place in the convent, and how it's that so many persons kept leaving the convent, people kept coming. And I love the part where they mentioned that a Nigerian priest had to come take care of a Catholic church in America, because that really made me just so happy. Nigeria was mentioned in David's book, and this priest actually did well. You see people traveling, and because churches were not dying, the gospel was coming from Africa to come revive the white community, because of course they saw the opportunity and a way to help. So this book is an amazing read, very amazing. I love the book. I love the book. So if you catch it in any bookshop, you can read it. We just have I think a few copies left, not so many, but then it's an amazing read. Thank you so much for staying with me through this long review. I hope you learned something. So who is my best character? That's a bit difficult to decide. A bit difficult to decide. But if you ask me, I want to go with Joanne for now. The reason why I want to go with Joanne is that Joanne is just someone who knew what she wanted from the get-go, even though it was intermingled with the heartache she had felt from her boyfriend who betrayed her. When the guy came back, she was able to stand firm and say, no, this is not what I want now for my future. You know what? We have to find a new chapter and a new path for her life. She was dying inside, but she took a decision that eventually brought some sweetness and goodness in her life. So it's something that I really like. And thank God for Angelina taking over the father's restaurant. It was just timely and amazing. And I think it just calls us back to understanding that our parents need us as much as we want to fulfill purpose and do all that stuff. Our parents sometimes want us close by, and we shouldn't deny them that opportunity, especially when you're the only child. It's a bit dicey. There's nothing to be fussy about it, but then it's a bit dicey. If it's in your power, make your parents happy. If it's in your power, make them understand that you love them, and you don't know the kind of big dreams they're planning for you. And if it works like it worked in Angelina's case, then beautiful for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Grace. I hope you learned something. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be here next time to do another amazing book review. Thank you.